Hey everybody, I'm Jody Dahmer and thanks for watching Beargrass Thunder. I'm here at the Gibbs Woodland Garden in the Parklands of Floyds Fork, specifically Broad Run Park. We're going to be doing a walkthrough today to show you the new exhibit and see all the different plants, over 47,000 with 200 different species. Let's go. So this is all Kentucky coffee tree. And it used to be the state tree of Kentucky, and now it is the tulip tree, otherwise known as the tulip poplar. Reason it's not the Kentucky coffee tree anymore is because actually the seeds of that plant are poisonous, and so if you make coffee out of it, it's not really the best for you or your health. So this is a bur oak. You can see that this is one of the oldest trees in the area here, and gosh, that has to be hundreds of years old at this point. So what we're looking at right here is what's known as a dry stone bridge. And so this rises 20 feet above the ravine. It's about 11 feet wide, and there is no concrete used as a mortar holding those stones together. They are just individually stacked in a way that the weight pressing down on that arch is more than enough to support people walking across it. So over time, those stones will shift, they'll swell, they'll do some moving, but the entire structure is going to be sound. And that is really cool to have in the middle of this setting. Looks like someone had a marriage proposal here. You can see the wax from the candles.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking that I could show a little bit about, we're in a forest, how do you know what tree you're looking at? So I know that for someone who's just getting into the outdoors, you look at the forest and you just see a wall of green, a wall of trees. But there are some telltale signs. So if you look at this tree, you can see how it's flaky and how there's some bits of red pattern throughout. You can see that overall the trunk is relatively smooth, but has these bits flaking off. You also see that these dead branches here come out at an angle, and they seem to go almost all the way up the tree. So just based on those two things, I'm relatively certain this is called an eastern red cedar. And if you look up at the canopy here, you can see one over here as well. You notice that there are no real leaves on this tree. They're more scaly than anything. And these trees are one of the first to actually colonize a disturbed area. So without these cedars, there wouldn't be enough shade for anything else to grow. And so with cedars as tall as these, you can see they're in the process of getting shaded out by all the trees that came after. So it's really cool to see. Look at this tree. Now, do you see how this bark is much different than the one before? How there are ridges in the bark, how you can see some lichen, growing on it, of course, but you can see how the actual color of the tree bark is not very red. It's more whitish brown, tan in color. Looking up at the leaves, you can actually see that they are not scaly. They look like a leaf. And I know it's a little bit too far up to tell, but this is actually an oak tree. White oak, to be exact. I see a lot of the same kind of lichen on these trees. And by lichen, I mean that, do you see this blue color? This is actually a type of fungus that grows on the outermost layer of the bark. And there is a symbiotic interaction with some of them. I'm not really sure what species this specific one is, but I really want to draw attention to this bark. You notice how there's no ridges, and the bark of this tree is relatively smooth. And I would say for color, it's more whitish gray. And look at the leaves. If you know anything about Canada, you notice that the leaf almost looks like the Canadian flag. And there's a reason for that. That's because this tree is sugar maple. If you wait for it to get a little bit bigger, you can actually drill that for sap. Make some maple syrup. And here's a big cedar right here. Now, based on how big a tree is around, that's a good way of estimating how old the tree is. The thicker the tree, the older it is in the given area. So if you look around here, you notice that a lot of the trees are relatively skinny. So that means that they have to be younger than, say, this tree. You notice how big that is compared to, say, this. This is one of my favorite trees, actually. So you can see the leaf here. Do you see how it makes a heart shape? That means that this tree, along with these bean pods, almost look like pea pods, this is a redbud tree. And so in the spring, they're gonna have these gorgeous flowers. You can see them already starting to bud out on the trunk here. But in the spring, these have gorgeous pink flowers. Richard, I think that this is beargrass.
Seriously?
Yeah, I think this is wild hyacinth. So back in the 1700s, the settlers used to call this beargrass because the tubers of the plant were edible. And it used to grow all along Beargrass Creek, hence the name.
Ooh, that's a cool one.
And that's also one of the oldest ones. Wow. so this is a good tree. So when you're looking at a leaf that doesn't really look like anything, it just has this kind of oval shape, it's really important to know that there are actual ways of determining what this is just by the leaf. For one, look at the edge. So you can see here that it's a little toothed. It's not a straight edge, it has ridges in it. Another way to tell is by looking at the bark. So you can see that on the trunk of the tree, it's very smooth, very gray. There are only a couple kinds of trees that are native to Kentucky that have this incredibly smooth bark. And based on the leaves and the bark, that has to be a beech tree. River oats. And so how I can tell they're river oats is that they have this very interesting seed pattern. Very symmetrical, and you know, give a couple more months and they're gonna start turning brown and dropping. So this is a dogwood, and the way I can tell is it's a dogwood. Look at the bark. If you notice, the bark of that tree is very dark brown, has some ridges in it. The leaves, if you notice here, are smooth margins on the edges. It's not rough. And one very interesting quirk about dogwood trees is that if you actually separate the leaf, there are these fibers inside the leaf that piece it together. So do you see how they used the cedar to create a embankment there? I felt like I was a kid again. That was great.
Oh yeah, that was fun. From that? Ooh, no, that would be awesome.
So Richard, do you recognize this?
Good old pawpaw.
Mm-hmm. Wow, there are a lot of fruits on this one. So this is a really rare tree that also has heart-shaped leaves, but this is not a redbud. This is called a basswood tree, otherwise known as an American linden. And the reason I can tell the difference is redbuds never get this high. But one thing that's unfortunate is you can see how big this branch is, but it's become so heavy it's actually splitting from the bark. So you have to watch out for some trees, because the faster a tree grows is a usual sign of how weak the wood is. So when you buy trees for a landscape, you buy, if you're in the suburbs, you usually buy one that grows the fastest. But the problem is that when winter comes, ice comes, the limbs get too heavy, then you're dealing with half a tree. And it's a really common problem. You see the caterpillar nests in the trees? This is a really nice place to learn about the last kind of tree that we'll be talking about today. So if you look at this leaf, what do you notice about it? It's a lot different from the other leaves we've seen. They have what's known as lobes, so you can see that it's almost like someone took a jigsaw and really carved out this leaf. And when I see this leaf, and you notice that the edges have these really sharp tips, it's toothed, and it's also lobed. And looking at the bark here, you can see that it's a pretty smooth bark as well. So from all of these different things, I'm willing to say that this is a red oak. White oak usually do not have these kind of toothed edges on the leaf. Damn, it's pretty. One last one. So, yeah, look at this. This is a big leaf, right? This looks tropical. So what is it, right? This is called a big leaf magnolia. Pretty easy to understand. So this is a magnolia tree, very smooth bark and very big leaves. It almost looks like a banana plant. But these are actually native to Kentucky. They're deciduous, their leaves fall off in the winter, and they're able to survive. So if you're looking for a big shade tree that has big leaves, really go native here. Big leaf magnolias do a great job. Thanks for joining us on a wonderful edition of Kentucky Nature Walks by Beargrass Thunder. We're really excited you were able to join us at Broad Run Park. More specifically the Woodland Garden in Broad Run Park. And if you ever get a chance, come out here yourself. It's right next to Bardstown Road. It's part of the Parklands of Floyds Fort. Absolutely gorgeous out here. For more updates, and if you want to join us on the next adventure, please follow us on social media and beargrassthunder.com. We usually produce weekly videos, and we're really excited for you to be part of this. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell.